You've done it. You've set up the ultimate big bad. You've been hyping them up the entire campaign, their monologue is done, and you told your players your signature phrase before combat.
Your souls are shackled, and the time for battle is now. Roll for initiative.
And now everyone's lost their mind. And then combat starts. And it's something like this. Your players are bored, it's 2 hours in, and it's just saying, I hit him, you do math, rinse and repeat. It sucks, you feel bad, the players feel bad, and hell, even the motherfucking dice feel bad. But hey, I've been there. In fact, the first session as a DM I ran ended in a TPK. It was so bad, and I took it upon myself to learn the ins and outs of combat. And because of that, it led to a lot of my success as a professional dungeon master. But for those who don't know, I'm Sensei Suplex. I'm a professional DM who literally gets paid to run Dungeons and Dragons. I played a lot of D&D, running roughly 4 to 6 games a week at one point, and playing as a player in 2 other games, which helped me learn a lot and faster than the typical thing of running 1 game a week. And in that time, I made thousands of mistakes. Also, you don't have to, and you can learn the lesson without the scar. I still make these mistakes, but now I make them a little bit less, thanks to one of my favorite pastimes, anime. Whoa, not that kind. Not that kind. Yeah, there we go. That's the one. And today I'm gonna tell you what I did to make my combats feel just as exciting as this. Lesson 1, destruction and crits. So in anime, I always say when the animators start bringing in cubes, then the fight is fire. What does that mean? Well, in anime, a lot of the time to show the pure power and limitless potential of the characters, animators often show how when an attack hits or misses, they turn it into cubes to show how strong the attack was. It was so powerful, it didn't just annihilate it, it reconstructed it in an artistic way. Midori. Arigato. You can see it in here, or you could even see it in this time in Black Clover. Notice the pattern here? But what does this have to do with D&D though? Well, question, when does typically the most damaging abilities happen? Crits. Notice how I didn't say nat 20s though, right? Stay tuned for why. For critical strikes, if someone crits, we hype it up. We already do it out of the game, but I emphasize it in the game by describing more of the narrative elements to show how devastating it was. This can be done by just using any of your senses like smell, sight, hearing, etc. However, this is what I used to do, and it works very well. Use it if you want to. But what I do now is I actually do the opposite. I almost never describe how a player's critical strike looks like. I let them do it. So Matt Mercer popularized the "how do you want to do this" phrase. But I went the extra mile in allowing my players to describe what their attacks look like, or explain why they do an abnormal amount of damage in this particular moment. This lets players express their characters and show how they stand out compared to the rest of the party on a daily basis. And my players loved this. But not only when they describe the attack itself, I also add a +1 for crits occasionally where something in the environment changes. If it's a nat 20, it's typically a positive for the party. If it's a nat 1, it's a neutral effect, meaning it could be good or bad. It just depends on how people interact with it. So when someone crits, it looks something like this. And for those who use Foundry VTT, there's a module called JB2A Animations that can help bring these abilities to life with visuals. I've used it for the past 3-ish years and I've never gone back. It's one of the major things that makes me never want to go to another VTT like Roll20 or Owlbear Rodeo. But that aside, Sensei, what do you do on crit fails? So for full transparency, I actually stole this from someone and have been trying to implement this slowly but surely. But I do the following for crit fails. First off, I never, under any circumstance, describe a nat 1, ever. The players do. Even when an enemy rolls a 1, I'll ask them, that's a nat 1 for Clive the Destroyer. Illiken, what does your character do to make them roll a nat 1? Did they dodge? Did they tank the blow? What did they do? This again allows for player expression. And second, like I mentioned before, the environment changes in a neutral state. This means that I try to add stakes to the world where something is altered. Think of Battlefield 4 Levolution. Let's look at Dragon Ball Z, specifically at Cell versus Gohan. Cell made the Earth-destroying Kamehameha, well, hence the name, and if Gohan, Goku's son, dodged the attack, the Earth would be destroyed. He wanted to kill Gohan, sure, but the mist still had the kick behind it. Your players and enemies' abilities should be able to do this. I hate the idea of trained warriors who have practiced for like 82 years, missing and failing like a dumbass just because it's funny. That's why I let players describe crits and sometimes make crits destroy the environment sometimes. Destruction was a big one, but let's go to the next thing that I learned. Lesson 2, storytelling, and actually making mechanics to actualize it. Today we're going to be looking at 2 anime. One of which barely has any physical exchanges, but when they do hit, it hits so hard they have to scream out their moves out loud because their mentor did it. The second is notorious for making fights last absolutely ages and then having flashbacks on flashbacks. Can you guess what these anime are? Well, we're talking about My Hero as the first one and the second one being Naruto. So with My Hero, the thing about the show is that the characters are literally just kids trying to become actual superheroes. And because this is the premise, it leads to a lot of rapid character development, or at the very least, character development to overcome their immediate fight. So I don't like calling Dungeon Masters storytellers, but that's just me. However, because of this mantra, I tried to figure out a way to gamify storytelling to make it easier for myself. And that's why building my longer fights by setting markers for my villains. Now, I want to stay away from railroading, but what I can do is, if an enemy reaches this threshold, here I'll describe them fighting in a different way, and I'll have their dialogue kind of change or their personality shift a little bit. This is the highest thing I have a chance of being able to control during a fight, but pretty much anything else, it's a complete coin flip. So I don't really worry about it. For minor fights, I might do 2 thresholds, while for major fights, I might do 3 health thresholds. Now, when people go through these thresholds, this is where your typical anime awakenings or transformations might come into play, but more so for the villains at least. How does Naruto tie into this? Well, y'all, I can't tell how many goddamn times someone gets punched in Naruto and they have a whole ass flashback for like 20 minutes. Like, they got punched and then started thinking about their childhood, their favorite food, and anything else. That shit's annoying in anime, but in D&D it might be useful. Hear me out. In 5e, turns and rounds take forever, and especially if you have a big group. It is what it is, but it's even worse when you go down and you basically have to wait more than 1 turn rotation to be healed in the first place. If not multiple turn rotations and all you do is roll a d20. Nah, screw that. Here's what I do at least. It ain't much, but it's honest work. When I go to the player's turns who's making a death save, I ask them what's going on through their character's mind as the god of death is growing ever closer to their soul and death is near. What is running through their mind? During this time, some players can use this to show their character's personality and show where their priorities may lie. For example, a lawful good paladin might describe how they feel like a failure because they can't protect anyone. The wizard might think back to their studies because they couldn't get that defensive spell down. Whatever it is, I let the players describe it, and then I roleplay with them. If applicable, I might reveal some of their hidden backstory during these moments as characters gain a moment of reflection, and during this, they may gain advantage for storytelling purposes, which can lead to them getting that hero moment by rolling a nat 20 and rising back to 1 HP. So maybe the character may see their sister that they've been trying to find for the entire campaign, and that bit of motivation as they describe it, it almost is willing them forward to really try to get back up on their feet and stand amongst all the odds. This is where those hero moments can come into play. But if you're evil, depending on the story implications and your player's consent, you could give disadvantage on certain occasions, but use that power again with consent and sparingly. I'm just throwing it into the video just in case someone didn't really think about it. We're just past the halfway point, but before I go into number 3, come here. Look, y'all. It's been literally my life mission to be able to meet other Black TTRPG creators like B. Dave Walters and Abria Iyengar, and to get other people who don't know about D&D into the space. So if you liked anything in this video, bro, hit the like button and run those likes up. All right, I'll wait. I got all day. All right, I'm done. Lesson 3, multiple objectives. In anime, sure, there are a lot of fights that they just hit each other until they die. However, a lot of the time, they often make up mini objectives to keep things more interesting and nuanced. For example, they might say, if I can just take out his eye with the Sharingan, then it will disable his power for long enough for me to be able to get a hit in. Or I don't fucking know, man. The point is they give themselves objectives to make it more interesting. Now, in D&D, there aren't any mechanics for taking someone's eye out besides, like, I don't know, blindness or whatever. And it also might be a bit harder to convey this all the time. And it'll probably be a little bit annoying. However, we can maybe think of bigger objectives to introduce players into more complex encounters. What I mean by this is, instead we can say a secondary objective is to secure the area for 1 to 2 rounds. And don't let any enemy in the area or it'll disrupt a magical aura or something. Or maybe it's grab the document in the thief's pocket, but don't kill the thief. The point is that we want to get people thinking about how they can use their abilities, their class features in different and unique ways than the typical. And with multiple objectives, it helps spark that creativity. However, this isn't a super unique lesson or tip, but what I've learned to help spark my creative juices to come up with different objectives is actually video games. And funny enough, first-person shooters is what helped me. Call of Duty for years has had some of the same game modes, and it's because, well, they work. Capture the flag, King of the Hill, kill confirmed, domination, gun game, you name it. They're all unique game modes that get people strategizing beyond kill the enemy. Look to video games and some of your favorite ones as inspiration to spice up combat and maybe include unique game modes or objectives. That's what I do. Maybe it'll work for you. Lesson 4, narration and music. You dictate the pace. So I combine narration and music because they're equally important and probably the easiest to get started doing today. So I've learned over the years being a player and a dungeon master that you play a huge part in dictating the energy of the game, especially in combat when there's lots of math and dice being thrown around. It's up to us to bring the excitement and create an environment welcoming the other player's excitement too. If we want epic moments, we have to set the stage for epicness, and often we have to be the first to bring the epicness with our narration. So instead of it just being a case of, all right, you cast Eldritch Blast, you hit with a crit, roll damage, nice, they're dead. Okay, anything else you want to do for your turn? And instead, I try my best to say sometimes, as the eldritch electricity from your patron leaves your hand, it explodes with a massive boom, sending shivers down your enemy's spine. As it slams into the enemy, it pierces them, leaving a hole within them as the body collapses. With the enemy dead, the others on the horizon beginning to cower, you have a bonus and movement action. What do you do? Now, granted, things don't have to be as long as I made it for that example, but I made it long because I wanted to emphasize a couple of things. 1, I used multiple senses rather than just sight. 2, I got really excited or really into what I was saying. This is a big one. If there's anything that you take away, it's probably this one. You have to get into what you're saying and doing. Also, for number 3, I say how the enemies are reacting to the player's turn to keep it dynamic and show their personalities, to make them unique and stand out. And then 4, I keep things moving by directing them with what they've used and what they have left to eliminate dead air and people wondering what's going to happen next. If you ever had it where it's like someone takes their turn and then you're just sitting there awkwardly for like 10 seconds before something else happens, this can maybe help out a little bit, at least in my experience. But if you want, rewatch that portion again to see exactly what I mean and how I implemented those tips. On top of this, we can use music to really help set the pace. If the fight is against an overwhelming and powerful force, I choose music that's slower but bassy so the moments can sometimes sync with descriptions, and those moments really hit. If it's a frantic or chaotic battle, or if the players are just kicking ass, I play faster paced music to set the tempo faster and match with how the fight was intended. Look, anime does this really well, but I can't play any anime music unless I want to get demonetized by like all of Japan. But a famous song, My Hero You Say Run, is one of the best examples of this. It's a song where it's supposed to empower the user to go beyond their limits and overcome everything with a breakthrough. And upon listening to it, you can feel the emotion and the energy behind it. But if you truly want to feel epic and unique in a D&D game, maybe you want to do so in the D&D MMORPG Project Aurora. It's the thing that I run with dozens of other players, about 40 other staff members, and more. It's basically my own little project where I try to solve every D&D issue possible that prevents D&D games from being awesome. I eliminated scheduling issues, finding people to play with, not feeling important in the games, and the issue of not vibing with your fellow players, and more. And I did it in a giant living universe where actions in one game affect all the other several dozen games that happen afterwards in real time, while providing people character art, merch, and more. So if you want to play D&D with me, click the link in the description to join the Discord and sign up from there. And with that, my friends, like the video and run those likes up, and I will see you guys when I see you guys. Peace.